I can't believe that I am today years old when I finally realized that young women are the original sacrificial lambs in this society. Not only we are the victims, but if we survive this victimhood, we become the perpetrators of our own trauma and our own generational experiences. Welcome back, my gorgeous viewers and readers. I hope your weekend was filled with gruesome, exciting reads and hot, thick, savory gravy. After talking about male violence for the past 2 weeks, I thought it could be interesting if we switched it up a little and talked about female violence and female rage, which is a topic that not only really, really excites me, but also it's something that is very pertinent to the times that we are living at the moment right now, which are not great. But I would say that the perfect book to use as an example to talk about female rage has to be The Lamb by Lucy Rose. And honestly, this is one of the best books that I have read this year, and let me tell you why. Just as a quick summary for those who haven't read the book, The Lamb by Lucy Rose is about Margot, who is an 11-year-old who lives with her mom in the midst of the forest in northern England, and who tells us her experience in extreme poverty, but also living with someone, with her mom, who is extremely immature, but also extremely psychopathic. Because the one thing that we know from the get-go about Margot and about Mama, who is Margot's mom, is the fact that they consume human meat, that they are cannibals. From the get-go, we see how much Margot enjoys consuming human meat, but more specifically, we see how much Mama does enjoy it, right? And also how hungry she is when she doesn't consume it. It's not like a physical hunger, but more as an emotional one, right? We see from the start that she is the one that is actively looking for these strays, which is how Mama and Margot call the people that they will consume or that they will kill and consume later. Until one day, a stray knocks into their cabin door, and they realize that this woman that appears in front of them is not a stray, but someone who is like them, someone who also enjoys consuming meat. From then onwards, we see how much the family dynamics change within the characters. Thank you to the introduction of the stray, who is called Eden. We see how Margot, even though she is the main character, we see how she at first acts as a secondary character for Mama's story, right? Margot is the one that is always acting as a Robin for a Batman, right? Whereas once Eden is introduced into the family or into the nuclear, we see how both Mama and Eden become these two big shiny stars who compete within each other, but also complement each other very well. And then Margot is relegated to an even lower position, not a secondary one, but also more so like an NPC of a story, right? She becomes the forgotten character that no one really cares about, and we see how this affects Margot and how this relates into the story, into the overall story that happens in the book. Now, before we discuss this book, I have to make a disclaimer. This book is horrific, okay? If you don't like horror, if you don't like gore, or if you don't like to see extreme scenes of viscera and bones and muscles, please don't read this book, because it is extremely literal. I was feeling a little sick when I was reading this book. So if you're not comfortable with reading these kind of things, please do not read The Lamb, because this book is not for you. Now, getting into the discussion, I have to be completely honest with you guys. I might be a little biased, but this is the perfect coming of age. This is the best coming of age story that I have ever read. And because not only I saw Margot growing into her own womanhood and also the grief of losing her infancy, but I also felt myself seen and saw myself relating to the story to a T, right? And this book exactly defines how I experience my own womanhood, or growing from a child to a woman. And yeah, let me just explain why, because there are a lot of little things that I think combined all together make the perfect story. The first thing that made me heavily relate to Margot was the fact that she views herself as a monster, right? Not only because she consumes human meat, which already makes her monster-like, right? But the way she describes herself, not only physically, but also emotionally, how she is as a person, right? That is something that I found extremely relatable, more specifically during the time or the age that Margot is in, right? So I was a late bloomer. I was 15 years old and I still looked like a child. Well, I would say 14, 15. Yeah, I still looked very much infant, right? Whereas other people my age, they grew into puberty way earlier. So how I view this monster nature from Margot is something that is very much studied in psychology. We see how during the puberty, puberty stage, everyone, or like the vast majority of people, tend to grieve their own infant body, and they struggle to connect to their own adult body, because obviously they have the mentality of an infant or the mentality of a teenager, whereas they already have the body of an adult, right? We see, for example, in the ages between, I would say 9, 8, or like 9, 10, and 16, this period of time, people struggle the most with their mental health, because obviously they grieve their infancy, but also they grieve the fact that they are growing into adulthood. And also, growing is so weird if you actually think about it, right? I remember myself, I was 13 years old and I was like 4'8" or something like that, right? I was like 148, something like that, centimeters if you are European and not American. And then in the span of 6 months, I grew into my height, which is 5'3", which is not a lot. I do understand. But growing during puberty is so strange, and you feel monster like. You feel like your limbs are too long, or like your body hair has grown from one day of another. Or your breasts, for example, your secondary sexual characteristics just grow from out of nowhere, right? So you find yourself in this period of time during puberty that you feel monstrous, because you don't recognize yourself in the mirror, and also you don't recognize the adult that you should be, and then you grieve this experience. And this is connected with the way Margot feels about her peers, right? She feels like she doesn't belong within her community, not only because she is extremely manipulated by her mother or by Eden as well, but also because she feels monstrous, which I think is also a very generic human experience, right? At least in my opinion, or in my experience. When I was growing up as a teenager, I used to feel like no one else could understand me, right? Because I was the only one that was experiencing these mental health issues, or that I was feeling like a monster because I was growing up in like weird places, but not in others. And I think this is something that is very much a common human experience. But when you're a teenager, when you are in puberty, you think that you're special and you think that you're unique. So therefore, you feel isolated from society or from your community, even though everyone experiences the same thing, right? So I think this is something that also I found very relatable, and I think is something that is crucial to talk about in a coming of age novel. Obviously, Marco already feels like a monster, and she already feels like she doesn't belong in her society or in her community. But also, we need to include in these feelings, we need to include the manipulation that she receives from her mom and from Eden afterwards. We see how these two characters have a heavy influence into what Margot thinks or what Margot believes of herself, right? I would say I will talk about Margot. I will talk about Mama and Eden later, but more specifically about Margot, I see how all the thoughts that Mama and Eden have about Margot reflect into her own character, right? Or into her own psyche. We see how Ruth, Mama, always says that she's not worth it, or that she has to stay quiet. She can't say things because she always ruins things. And then we see in her own narrative that she believes fully believes that she's the one that ruins things. Whereas in reality, Mama is actually the one that is abusing her, and she's the one at fault because she feels estranged. If we combine all these issues together, we can see something that is very common in womanhood, or like in the woman experience overall, which is the fact that when you are an infant, you are treated differently than if you are a woman. And more specifically, when you go through puberty, so let's say when you grow into the body of a woman, you see how different society treats you, right? More specifically, men. You see how you're not a child anymore. You are a woman and you're responsible of your own actions, right? You're 13 and suddenly you grow a pair of boobs, and then everything is your fault because kids are touching you, or because your peers are trying to grope you, right? It's your fault because now you have the body of a woman. So I would say Margot, from the get-go, I see how she grieves becoming a woman, right? We see how sad she is that she's growing body hair or that she got her period, because she mourns being an infant. She mourns the innocence and the lack of knowledge and ignorance of not understanding or not dealing with the repercussions of womanhood. Now, getting into the family dynamics, when I first started reading the book and I saw the way Mama behaved, the first thing that I thought was, oh, this is the typical emotionally immature narcissistic parent, right? Like I literally immediately categorized her over there. But then when Eden came along, I started seeing that actually that is not as, like, Mama's behavior is not as easy as just categorizing her as a narcissistic parent. It actually has a lot more depth that I actually thought. And I would say that both Mama and Eden act as an example of how other women treat you once you become a woman or once you become a young woman, right? And it is fascinating because it is actually so accurate and so spot on, because when you grow into a woman or when you become an adult woman, you see how men treat you, obviously, but also more specifically how other women, especially elder women, treat you. So there are two types of women, right? We have the Mama type and then we have the Eden type. Starting with the Mama type, the best example that I could give you is the kind of middle-aged woman that is in a unhappy marriage, and she married quite young, had children, and now finds herself set back, right? She finds herself that she doesn't have the body that she used to have before she got married. She is nowhere near in her career where she thought she would be. And also she married a guy that actually doesn't really like her, right? And they are bitter. They are hateful, because they see a young woman with a lot of potential that they could literally eat the world, and then they find themselves jealous because they once were in this position and they lost it. So now they envy you and they want to tear you down, right? They want to just push you down with them and just make you as unhappy as they are, right? And this is how I see Mama. I see that she wants Margot to fail. She wants Margot to feel like she feels, right? That's why I thought originally that she was the emotionally immature narcissistic parent, which I think she kind of is, but also more like related into this paradox or into this analogy. She is bitter of Margot. And that's just exactly how I see it, right? Now, for Eden, I was actually very confused up until I finished the book, because I didn't really understand her character, right? At first, I thought, oh, she views Margot as competition for Mama's love. But then the more I read in the book, or like the more I saw her reacting or acting towards Margot, the more confused I was. Until I finished the book, and then I was writing the script for this video, and then I realized I know exactly what Eden is, right? Let me put an example here, right? I view Eden as the kind of woman that has gone through it all, right? She was in the trenches, and then she suddenly came out, freed herself, and then realized that actually the world is fucked, right? So someone, for example, who got married really young, or that was part of a religious cult, aka Mormons, and then they suddenly at 25 they realize this is fucked. This is just abuse. I will not tolerate this. And then they escape and they view the world, right? They see the world outside as the miracle, right? As something that will save them. And then when the more they see the world, or the more they travel around and they have different experiences, the more they realize that actually patriarchy is everywhere, and they are just different flavors because of culture, right? And then they become this kind of middle-aged woman that is the spinster single type of woman that is not bitter about younger women, but also is so protective about them, that doesn't let them free, right? That doesn't allow them to just make their own mistakes because they think they know better, right? Which in most cases they do, but sometimes you just need to allow people to make mistakes. So we have two types of women, right? We have the bitter middle-aged woman who is mama, and then we have the overprotective helicopter parent who is Eden. I personally find this extremely relatable because as a young woman, I found myself experiencing both sides of the same coin, right? I experienced plenty of mamas. I have experienced plenty of Edens. So when it comes to mama, the first example that pops into my mind is when I tell people that I don't want children or that I don't want to be a mother. There are a lot of women that go bananas and that go crazy and say, how can you not want children? This is the best thing that someone could ever do. This is why you're made of. Like this is your purpose, right? And they are bitter that you don't want children because they have gone through it. They have gotten married. They have actually they have given birth and have children, and then they find themselves alone. They find themselves that they are miserable, and that everything that they do, motherhood, is just pain and suffering, right? So they expect you to do the same thing because it was forced onto them, or they were forced to choose that option. And then when you say that you don't want this option, then they find themselves like bitter and jealous, and then they find themselves flabbergasted because you are not choosing that option, or they didn't even know that this was an option, right? Whereas for the Eden experiences, or like the Eden type of women that I have experienced, I don't have that many examples, but one of the examples that pops into my mind, for example, is that when I was a teenager, I had a teacher in high school who would always make snarky remarks of, oh, you girls should be single, you should not have boyfriends because men are the worst, this, that, yada yada yada, right? And she was so dead set on that all the girls had to be single, that if she saw you like in the halls, for example, or in during recess, if she saw you with a guy, she will actively separate you both, and actually give you the tension, not the guy. She would give you the tension, and she would say like, I'm doing this for your own good, right? So it got to a point where she was so desperate for us to be free that she actually put us in a category. And how do these two topics relate? Well, I'm very glad you asked, because how I view this book is that we see how Margot is already extremely isolated from her community, from her society, right? She is like a changeling, how she says it herself. But then we also see how the two references that she has, they are the two sides of the coin. They are opposites, right? Even though they are connected by the same experience. We see how Mama is bitter because she is angry, she is jealous that Margot is free, that Margot hasn't got through the hardships, right? So therefore, she expects Margot to do the same, right? She wants to inflict this pain. Whereas Eden, for example, Eden wants to protect her. Eden wants to cuddle her and just keep her safe inside her so she doesn't get hurt as she did, right? So then we see how these two sides of the coin actually connect, and they find each other. They find someone, like Mama finds someone who protects her, and Eden finds someone who can express this rage that she has inside. And this is exactly why their love is so explosive, because they are looking at a mirror. They are looking at the thing that they desire, right? Mama desires someone who is obsessed with her, someone who actually gives her everything and who allows her to be herself, right? Which is someone who eats human meat, someone who hunts, someone who accepts these things, and someone who allows her to be ugly, to be the ugly parts. And this is something that the mama type of women, they can't get, right? They always have to be the mother, they have to be the wife, they have to be the co-worker, they have these roles that they have to be, and that they are pressured to fulfill, right? That's why mama is so bitter, and that's why she is so in love with Eden, and she is so infatuated, because she views Eden as someone who allows her to be ugly. Whereas for Eden, for example, when she sees mama, she sees someone who is free, someone who is not chained to her own constrictions, right? We see how Eden is, she seems perfect on the outside, but then once you get you get into the inside, you see the rage, you see the pain, you see all the ugly wounds that she doesn't allow herself to show, right? So when Eden sees mama, or when she is seen by mama, she views herself, or she feels like she has the freedom to express all these ugly parts, right? So they connect, or each other, they connect with the other because they allow themselves to be ugly. This is exactly why Mama and Eden hate Margot so much at the end, right? Because they view Margot as this pure, perfect creature. They see her as a victim, or as a potential victim, right? And this is why they hate her, because Margot, she's not the one that kills. She's not the one that hunts the strays, and she's not the one that cooks the meat. She's only a victim. She's only she's only completely innocent, right? She's just the passenger on this car that we call life. And when Eden and Mama look at Margot, they view her not only as something pure and something perfect, but as something that they are meant to be, right? They are meant to be like Margot. They are meant to be pure. They are meant to be virginal. They are meant to be innocent, right? Just so someone can consume them, and then they become either Eden or Mama. That's why they are so bitter, because they once were they once were Margot, but then they were corrupted. And this is exactly what happens in society, because once you become a young woman, you're viewed as a threat, not only by patriarchy and most men, because now that you're an adult, then you're not a teenager anymore, and you have your own power and your own independency. So therefore, they cannot lock you in the chain of patriarchy, right? With, for example, teenage pregnancies or early marriages. But now you're also viewed as a threat by women, right? Because now you have the power to decide, right? That means that either you have the power to decide to be better than those mamas, or to make mistakes, the same mistakes that the Edens have made, right? So therefore, no matter what you do, you will always make people upset. If you want to be a young mother, for example, you want to get married at 19 and then have 5 children, right? The Edens will be upset, and they will tell you that you're being manipulated. But if you want to keep your career, like keep studying, get a career and work by yourself, be single, live your best life, the mamas will be hating you and they will be jealous. So therefore, there's no way that you can please people, right? Because suddenly you're not a puppet anymore. You become your own independent person. I would also like to add that this journey is actually so much more common than we think, right? And it's something that all women have gone through, or many women have gone through. And it's not only infuriating, but also extremely upsetting, right? Because you find yourself utterly alone. You find yourself isolated, right? Because no matter what you do, you will always make a mistake, or someone will always think that you are wrong, right? This is why I think that female rage is so unique and is so gender specific, because I don't think any men or like any cis hetero men can experience this sort of rage, right? Because you are treated, or like from the get-go, since you are an infant, you are treated as a sacrificial lamb, right? You're treated as someone who has to stay quiet, someone who has to stay pure and virginal, like Margot, right? Who has to be innocent. And then once you go through puberty, then suddenly out of nowhere, then you are slowly being watched, right? The moment you start growing into your adulthood, or like during your teenage years, you are watched. Every move that you make, people are watching you. Not only men, right? Because we know that many men are disgusting and they love to go through for teenagers, because obviously we are not mentally developed enough for us to understand that we shouldn't be dating like older men, but that's another story for another day. But also we are being watched by the other women, right? By the other millions of women that are around the world. We are constantly under surveillance. And this is why I always say that women are constantly performing, because we are always under surveillance. And this also fits the cycle of being the sacrificial lamb, right? So for example, in my experience, right, as a child, I was very innocent to the point of being gullible. Like, I would believe any single thing that you would tell me, right? Because my thought was, why would you ever lie to me? What's the point of you lying, right? Why would you need to be like so disingenuous? I would just believe people, right? And I also was quite a good student. I wasn't great, right? But like my grades were quite good. So I was always paired with the worst, classmates that you could imagine, right? I was always paired with one specific classmate that I hated the guts of, because he was just so obnoxious, right? He will always be bullying me. He would like grab my hair and pull it. He would throw everything around me. He would purposely speak and purposely insult me constantly during class whilst the teacher wasn't looking, because once I reacted, then I was the one that was at fault, right? To the point of like the fact that I was paired so much with this specific student, right? To the point of my grades going down, that people were always blaming me. Like, people ended up blaming me because my grades went down. They never blamed the other student, and they also blamed me, and they said, you haven't done a good enough job for making sure that this student actually passes, or making sure that this other classmate actually behaves. When I'm like, I'm just a child. What are you doing? Why are you telling me that this is my responsibility when you're the teacher, right? But this is like the first, most basic example of being an sacrificial lamb as a child, right? And this is where the journey starts. You're always told that you have to do whatever, right? And that you have to sacrifice yourself for others, and just to make sure that you're doing everything for the common good, right? And then when you become a teenager, right, and you develop your own emotions, you develop your own psyche, then out of nowhere, you are the rebel child, right? When you say, why am I doing this? Or why are you telling me that I have to do this? Why? Like, you are trying to understand. People see you as the rebel. People see you as someone who doesn't behave, right? And then they blame you, and they actually put fingers at you. Like, just put fingers at you and say, oh, look, this is the black sheep, and she's always the one that is causing problems. When I'm just asking why. I'm just asking, why does society work like that, right? And this is something that happened to me very, very often, especially during my teenage years. When I found something that was not fair, I will always ask, why is this happening? Or like, why am I being treated differently? And then the blame was on me, because I was asking, like, just for the fact that I was asking the why, or I was asking, I was trying to understand the cycles, or the cycle of being a sacrificial lamb, then I was the one at fault. And then lastly, once you grow up into adulthood, right, everything keeps being the same, right? You still are in this cycle of being the sacrificial lamb. You sacrifice yourself for your coworkers. You do this work for free because we don't actually have the capacity right now, so please help us. You are the only one that can do this. You sacrifice yourself, right? Or your friends, like someone needs help from you, you sacrifice yourself because you are trying to be a good person, right? You're trying to give to others. Or for example, when you are, you are, as a woman, you are the one that does the vast majority of the household because you are already used to it, or because your partner is very busy, or therefore you keep sacrificing yourself, right? It's the cycle of keep doing things and like keep working on yourself and just keep all this frustration inside because you don't want to be bothersome, you don't want to be the trouble, right? Or you don't want to be the rebel that is always asking questions and is always being so forward with their emotions, right? You don't want to be emotional. But then also, no matter what decision you make, people will never be satisfied, right? Because if you focus on your career, some people will be like, oh yeah, that's great, but why are you not focusing on getting married and having children? And if you actually want to have children and be married, for example, be a housewife, then people are like, oh, you're a gold digger, and therefore because you don't have a career, right? People will never be happy because you are making your decisions yourself, right? Obviously, we need to take into account that there's a bigger scheme of things, right? Obviously, culture and society and patriarchy put a lot of pressure on us to decide either way, right? Obviously, capitalism plays a role as well, but that's another story for another day. But at the end of the day, no matter what decision you make, even if you're making a conscious decision on what you want to do, people will never be happy because you're not sacrificing yourself enough, because what you're meant to do is to do everything. You're meant to have the children, you're meant to have the husband, you're meant to have the career, you're meant to like be sprinting around like on life, just keep doing a marathon, right? Whilst other people, especially men, are just jogging on the side, or like are literally just walking, or straight up like being dragged by other women. But you are the one that is expected to win the race, right? You are expected to win this marathon, and that's why you're sprinting with all your might. But at the end of the day, you will never win. This is why I say this experience is so gender specific, right? I have never seen a case where the sacrificial lamb, as we say, is a guy or is a man, right? If that's your case, I would love to hear from it because I have never seen it in my life. So I would love to hear from you. I'm not judging. Obviously, it can happen, or there's a possibility that this can happen, but I have never experienced it. So please put it in the comments. I would love to hear from you. But yeah, this is why I say that this is so gender specific, because this is something, I only view women as sacrificial lambs. They are the only ones that are constantly pushing people forwards, right? They are the ones that take care of the kids, take care of the husband, take care of work. They are the ones that are just literally just making sure that everyone finishes the race. As a quick conclusion, because this video is getting too long, The Lamb by Lucy Rose is the perfect depiction of the early years of womanhood, more specifically on how we grieve the loss of our innocence and our infancy, and how we slowly become women or become full-grown adults. I would say, honestly, this book has actually made me shook. I'm flabbergasted, and this is one of the best books that I have read this year so far, not only because of how gruesome and how disgusting the book is in general, but more specifically on how well the analogy works, right? How this sense of cannibalistic desires actually really matches really well with our desire to be ugly and to be to release our own female rage, right? I would say this book is a masterpiece. And if you are a woman and you have gone through it during your teenage years, this is the perfect book for you, because this will absolutely change you. That's all for today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this review. If you have read the book, please make sure that you comment down below. I would love to hear your opinion about it. I'm sure that I missed out a lot of things. So please make sure that you put anything that you think is also adding to the topic. And if you haven't read the book, but you are interested, please make sure that you comment down below as well. Or you can follow me on my social media. I'm always active over there. So also please make sure that you follow me as well. We can be mutuals. And yeah, thank you so much for watching again. I hope you have a great rest of your week, and I'll see you soon, guys. Bye.